Welcome back, AP. All right, so we are now beginning one of my favorite units to talk about in the entire course, right? So some people are always like, you say that about every unit, Mr. Terry. Oh my God, why are you so excited? Well, the big thing about it with this unit is, first of all, we are now literally more than halfway done with AP European history content. Clap it up for yourselves. This is ridiculous, okay? We are literally now moving into what is known as time period 3, right? We are getting into the idea of industrialism, post-industrialism, political isms following the fall of Napoleon, the French Revolution and its effects on the continent, and how it will forever be changed, right? So what you can call this unit is really up to you. You want to call it 1815 with an asterisk, right? That's completely fine, because it's a very significant year. If you want to call it 1815 and the Industrial Revolution, you can call it that. If you want to call it 1815, the Industrial Revolution and the effects of the French Revolution, you can call it that. I don't really care, all right? Because the big thing about it is we're just now kind of moving into a unit that's got a lot of different elements to it, a lot of different sides to it, right? We're going to first talk about the biggest effects and political effects of Napoleon following his downfall and the spread of French revolutionary ideas to the rest of the continent of Europe, right? We're going to start seeing people pop up being like, well, you know what? Those revolutionaries had some good ideas. And then you're going to see some other people pop up like, those revolutionaries had terrible ideas. I hate everything. Don't change. All right? So, we're going to lead to this whole kerfuffle that's going to be coming up now. Now, look, but getting into it, let's talk about it, right? Let's just dive right in, all right? So why is the year 1815 just so very essential to the understanding of European history, right? Well, first of all, the way I like to look at it with this nifty little example that I've created over the past, Napoleon squeezed the tube of toothpaste, right? How many of y'all have ever squeezed the tube of toothpaste, too much comes out, and you're like, oh, darn it, I can't get that back in there, right? That's what I like to refer to as Napoleon's toothpaste, right? Napoleon's toothpaste is this idea that you have now spread ideas out there. There are now ideas out there, revolutionary ideas, active enlightenment thought, overthrowing your government, toppling it from the inside out, right? That toothpaste has now been squeezed. There's no putting it back in. These ideas are now out. It's unavoidable, and it just is what it is, okay? It is what it is. So the big things that are going to be happening with Napoleon's toothpaste, we've got the balance of power, right? What country is now truly the longest reigning, longest standing, very big authoritative group in the entire area? Which one is the one that's going to be figuring out how we're going to pick up after Napoleon? And how are we going to restructure Europe after he destroyed the Holy Roman Empire? Weakened the Austrians, did this, did that, right? And all of this is going to be figured out at this thing called the Congress of Vienna, right? At the Congress of Vienna in 1814 to 1815, the big thing you have to understand is that they're going to, they have to figure out a way to rebalance the powers, right? And so they decide to have a meeting of this thing known formally as the Quadruple Alliance, right? The Quadruple Alliance. Now, the Quadruple Alliance is going to be 4 countries that are going to meet together to decide how big are the countries going to be? Where are our new borders? What are we going to do with all this liberalism that Napoleon has been spreading around? And what are we going to do about monarchs and things like that, right? So what are we going to do? Are we going to punish France? Are we not going to punish France? Are we going to apply this thought? Are we not going to apply this thought? But who do you think they are? Anybody want to take a guess? Okay, I hear a lot of shouting back there. You know what I mean? Good job. Morgan, you are right with one of them, right? You got Russia, right? And then I think I heard Mali. Mali Manjapan said Austria, right? Very good job. Austria is another big one too. Oh, there you go, Gia. I heard you. Prussia. And then that last one is going to be none other than Great Britain. All right, so now the Quadruple Alliance was Russia, Prussia, Great Britain. And Austria. So the EAs and Great Britain. Now, the big thing about it is these are also the coalition forces. And now Ahmadouli's like, oh, that's the coalition forces, right? Those groups of other countries assembling their armies to go off and attack France during their revolution. Yeah. So the other person that was at that meeting was Restoration France, all right? So you have to understand that the Quadruple Alliance of Russia, Prussia, Austria, and Great Britain are going to try and figure out how to rebalance Europe so everything is effectively even everything is economically back to where it's supposed to be, the kings have been reinstalled like they want them, and that conservatism will still continue to reign, right? So, but the problem is they do have to bring in the kid that did the bad thing, right? They have to figure out, are they going to punish France? Are they going to make them an active involvement in this meeting? So they do invite them, right? And Restoration France is going to be France post-Napoleon, right? To fashion a general peace settlement after Napoleon's big defeat, right? Because they had to figure out a way to take Europe from this and turn it into something that is elegant, efficient, nice, beautiful, and economically viable, right? And so they decide to turn it into this, right? And some of y'all are probably immediately looking at this being like, I've seen this map before. All right, so no, you haven't. All right, so you've seen something like this map before, but you haven't seen this map before, right? This right here is the Concert of Europe map. You got to think about Europe as a concert, right? Whereas when you looked at it like this, it sounded a little bit like this. But they want it to look like this. Everything beautifully in motion. The pieces all where they're supposed to be. Everything sounding efficient. Because they're sick of this. Because they want this. So, with the Concert of Europe, they'll be able to rebalance the powers officially. They'll be able to have the Austrian Empire where they believe it's meant to be, the Russian Empire, the Germans, the Prussians will also now be gaining some land and territory, and then they'll be taking France and shoving them back where they believe they're supposed to belong, because they don't want a French colony that goes across the entirety of Europe, right? Now, how do you deal, though, with France? What do you do? How do you deal with France and put them where they're supposed to be? How do you make sure that they've been punished, but then also not eliminated economically from the rest of Europe? Well, the Quadruple Alliance decides to be lenient, be lenient with France. They decide that they want to try and fix them without extremely punishing them, right? Sorry for the absence of an in parentheses right there. Now, what they're going to decide, though, is they're going to be like, okay, so the provisions for France are going to be decided with this guy in mind. Who is this guy? That's none other than Charles Talleyrand, right? So Charles Talleyrand is the dude that worked with Napoleon to overthrow the coup, right? He's the ultimate chameleon. I know that some of y'all are like, oh my God, there's so many people that managed to stay alive through this whole thing. Yeah, the Abbé Napoleon, but Charles Talleyrand was somebody who supported the revolution, supported the Committee of Public Safety, supported Napoleon in his overthrow, supported the Directory, supported all of it, right? So he then helps them come to the ideas of the boundaries of 1792. So first of all, he argues for France, saying some of our boundaries were too small. The Holy Roman Empire had small provincial states inside of the borders of France. We need to go to the boundaries of 1792, not the boundaries of 1789. And he won that debacle. He actually won that argument. So they got a little bit of extra land than they did when the revolution started. So at the boundaries of 1792, that's going to be the end of the war, the first coalition. The other big one is the Quadruple Alliance under the Quadruple Alliance and also Restoration France under Talleyrand decide that France will have to pay no war reparations whatsoever, which is wild. You would think immediately they would point the finger and be like, you need to pay to fix everything that Napoleon broke, right? And then also here's the big one. And I think the reason why the Quadruple Alliance was able to let everything else go is because it all had to do with this. Restore the Bourbons. So that's right. I'm not kidding. After Napoleon left in 1815 for the second time when he was exiled to St. Helena after Waterloo, now we've got Louis the 18th. The Bourbons came right back. It's almost in a way as if the French Revolution was kind of in vain. But funny enough, it wasn't, because actually Louis is going to be a constitutional monarch, right? Because they actually did keep some of the documents from the French Revolution. Now, the goal of the Congress of Vienna, that's what I mean by COV, the Congress of Vienna's goal was that don't ever let anything like the French Revolution ever occur again throughout Europe, right? That's their biggest goal. Now, the big thing, though, going forward, is all of this is going to be achieved. Oh, whoa, what's going on? There we go. All of this is going to be achieved by doing a lot of nitpicky little things, right? We're not going to make France pay for their war reparations. We're going to get Charles Talleyrand to argue with us until he gets 1792 borders instead of 1789 borders. And then also we're going to figure out how to make sentinels on the Rhine, right? So, like, this is a really, really cool little, like, snippet that I like a lot. They give Prussia more land. All right, so they give Prussia more land because now that the Holy Roman Empire is gone and it's been completely destroyed and now been turned into this thing called the Confederation of German States, or the German Confederation, Prussia is the largest of the German Confederation states next to Austria, right? Austria and Prussia are very, very large, but Prussians and Austrians, even though they speak the same language, do not consider themselves the same people. So they give Prussia a job. Prussia decides at the Congress of Vienna that they will become what is known as the Sentinel on the Rhine, right? And what a sentinel is a guard, right? So they give them more land next to France to kind of just be able to invade whenever needed, right? So actually you see the dark green right here in the Rhine River that runs through this area right here. That is going to be the Prussian lands that they're given. So they're referred to as the Sentinel on the Rhine because they were given more land so they could quickly react to France if they did anything that they weren't supposed to, right? And all these things, all these provisions, all these thoughts, all these theories are mainly headlined by the representative that arrived to represent Austria, right? I'm not kidding. This is Austria's time to shine. And it was achieved by this dude, Prince Clemens von Metternich, right? Clemens von Metternich is a guy that goes down in history as being one of the most essential in rebalancing the power of Europe. He is considered the conservative of the era superhero, and even though he has a lot of really sketchy ideas, he did usher in the longest era of peace in Europe. Literally, from 1815 to 1848, there is going to be no war whatsoever for 30 years within the boundaries or continents or the continental area of Europe, which is going to be the longest it's ever gone without some form of war. Because what did we talk about ever since the 30 Years' War, right? The War of Spanish Succession, the War of Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War. There was always a war between somebody. But under Prince Clemens von Metternich, there's going to be 30 years of peace, right? Which is wild and actually very, very important that we understand. So even though his ideas were bad, and he kind of repressed the revolution, and he made poor people stay poor people, and he didn't like him anyway. We don't really like him as a person. He's kind of like Napoleon in that way. He did one really good thing, and he did a lot of awful things. So we like the fact that people weren't dying from war, but we don't like the fact that he just wanted all these other people to come back. So with this, we have to kind of take a pause real fast, okay? We've got to hit pause real quick, and we're going to be like, okay, well, what is happening right now? So under Prince Clemens von Metternich, we're seeing this thing known as the rise of the isms, or it's what I refer to as the rise of the isms, right? So now if I had you in class, I would actually go over these things on the board. We would write them all up there and stuff like that. But we're going to break these isms down into a couple of little things, right? Who they are, who they represent, things they want, things they hate, okay? So got it? So let's do this real fast, okay? So we have 3 big isms coming up. Now, some of y'all are going to be like, but what about nationalism and imperialism and all these other isms that we're going to have to talk about later? All right, so well, look, I'm talking about political isms. So let's give it a little bit more of a definition. Rise of the political isms. All right, so these are all the isms that are going to be used to refer to how they're going to rule over countries and how to decide who's got more authority, who gets what, who gets this right, who gets that right, okay? So we've got conservatism. All right, so conservatism. All right, so conservatism. And then we have classical liberalism. All right, so ism. Now, ism. And then we have what's known as socialism, which is going to be born of the French Revolution, right? Now, big thing, though, let's go ahead and start with the conservatives, okay? People that are big fans of conservatism are people like Clemens von Metternich, right? Let's go ahead and put it out there. What do they want? All right, so like question mark, what the conservatives want, no change, okay? They want to refer back to the absolutist era. They want the absolutists, right? So that's who they want to be in power. So that's the big thing also, really quick. Where did, absolutists, power, question mark, where they believe it should reside? Within the hands of kings and monarchs, okay? They believe in a Hobbesian view of people, that they're disgusting, they will take advantage of each other, they will lead to revolution, they'll murder their cousins and their brothers and their everybody else, and that they don't care for blood, or that they don't care about bloodshed, they just want to see death in the streets, right? So what the conservatives want is the kings and the monarchs to have all the power, right? And so let's go with things they like, all right? So the things they like, all right, things conservatives like are large militaries that are used for suppressing revolutions whenever they're necessary. They also like the restriction of rights, right? Restriction of rights. And they also like noble privilege. Okay, so they like the idea of feudalism, its old vestiges, its old ideas and stuff like that. Now, other little important thing that we should probably put up here is who they are, right? They are the old money wealthy, all right? So they are the former robe nobles, sword nobles, nobles. That's the conservatives at this time period, right? So they want noble privilege, they want the restriction of rights, they want large militaries, these are things they like, okay? Now let's look at things they hate, okay? So things they hate are constitutions, all right? So they hate constitutions because what do constitutions do to kings? They limit their power, right? So they don't like that. They want absolutists and kings and monarchs that have complete unilateral control over a very, very large military. They love people like Louis XIV. They love people like that. They're big, big fans. Now, also, I put things that he hate. All right, so things they hate are constitutions. Things they also hate is suffrage. All right, so they hate the idea of anybody voting. All right, like they don't like the ideas of anybody voting or doing these little things or approving anything at all. Right, so they don't like that. All right, and then the last thing that they especially hate more than anything else is a legislative body. All right, so like they can't stand the concept of legislatives, legislatures, or anyone limiting the power of their kings, right? So now let's jump over to classical liberals, okay? Now these people are the middle class, okay? So these are the burgeoning middle class, money growing, all right? So these are the people that are garnering their wealth. The Industrial Revolution was occurring in Britain during this time period, so they're starting to see their money and their monetary funds grow and stuff like that. So that's who they are, right? When you're talking about classical liberals, some people refer to Thomas Jefferson as a classical liberal. Some people refer to the Marquis de Lafayette as a classical liberal. Like a lot of people are referred to as classical liberals during this time period. Some say that Jacques Necker is a classical liberal. So anyway, classical liberalism, though, just so you understand, okay? They believe, other thing that they like over here, mercantilism. Even though it's dumb, it's dumb. All right, so like anyway, so there we go. All right, now big things over here, though, okay? What do they want, right? What do classical liberals want? Who are these people? What do they want? So what do they want? What do they want? Question mark. The classical liberals want aggressive governmental and economic change, okay? Now, not crazy aggressive, but still pretty aggressive, all right? Where do they believe that the power should lie? Inside of a legislative body, okay? They believe that like legislative bodies and legislative branches are the things that can guide people in the right direction, right? Elected by suffrage systems, voted on by the people, approved of, and they actually are there to limit the power and protect the rights of people, right? So legislative bodies. All right, so they believe that most of the power should reside within a legislative body, right? What are some things that classical liberals they like? What do they like? Classical liberals love natural rights, okay? They like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. They like the Enlightenment ideas, right? Because they believe that it keeps people peaceful without wanting to have a revolution, and then you won't ever need a revolution because you have one successfully and you'll never need one again, right? So they love natural rights. Other things that they like a lot happen to be with limited suffrage, okay? They like limited suffrage. They don't like everybody being able to vote. They like smart, rich people being able to vote, right? Like, so they like the idea that the middle class should be able to vote. So when you're looking at the classical liberals, the biggest group, if you ever want to be able to reference back to them, is they are the old bourgeois, all right? So that is who they are. They are this old middle class that was around during the French Revolution. They're the ones that originally led them. Classical liberalism is a very important thing. Now, really, really quick, so you understand, classical liberals today are what you would refer to as modern-day conservatives, right? So the classical liberals of the era are actually going to end up becoming what a conservative is now. That's why we have to call them classical liberals instead of just liberal, right? Now, anyway, other things they like free market capitalism, all right? So they love the idea of free market capitalism. The strongest survives, the middle class grows. If you're not good enough, you will perish, right? So they love these ideas, right? Another very famous classical liberal, Winston Churchill is also a very famous classical liberal, all right? Now, really quick, let's go ahead and jump down to things they hate, all right? So now, they hate the ideas of absolutists, okay, because they don't like it whatsoever, and then they also dislike universal suffrage, okay, and they also dislike this, and this is very important. they don't like the idea of a welfare state. All right, so now the big thing about classical liberals is they do not like the idea that anyone's getting anything for like free, right? So they like, because it goes against their free market. They also hate limited or like tampered markets, okay? So they like the idea that it should be able to go as it wants, okay? So, and I'm going to put right up here, free market capitalism. We're going to put like one little extra little thing right there. We're going to, we're going to go laissez-faire. Laissez-faire, okay? So they also love laissez-faire economics, okay? Which means no government tampering, all right? Now we got one more, and then we're going to go ahead and cut this flip off right here just so y'all can kind of like let your brain decompress, and so we can be able to kind of attack these things a little bit more later on, because there's a lot of big stuff I got to be able to explain to you in class, and you kind of just need to be there in front of my face to be able to go over it. Now who are these people? These are the working class, okay? The socialists, all right? Now, the big thing about socialism, it is going to be born out of the French Revolution. They are the urban workers mostly. And they're also going to be like the poorer populations as well. Those are your socialists during this time period. And they believe, what do they want is a very, very important thing. What do they want? What do they want? All right, so they want aggressive societal change ushered in by a popular government. Okay, so now this is very, very important. Socialists want aggressive societal and economic changes ushered in by the government itself that has been elected upon by universal suffrage, right? So they believe that the power, question mark, should lie in the hands of the people, right? They believe that the people should have the ultimate deciding divine right to be able to vote for their people, vote for their electors, and then also rip them out of office if they don't do what they're supposed to, right? So they believe that the power should reside in the hands of every person regardless of class. So I'm going to say put people regardless of class, right? So regardless of class. Now, then we've got things they like, question mark, okay? They love natural rights just like the classical liberals do, right? They like natural rights. They also like universal suffrage, okay? So universal suffrage. And they also really, really like planned economics, right? So they believe that certain things should have prices on them that are set, that are never changed. Kind of like the bread of equality when we talked about it with the Reign of Terror, right? During the Committee of Public Safety. A lot like those ideas. They believe that planned economics are better to try and prevent the free market from destroying the working class, okay? So that is a big thing. What are some things they hate? Things they hate is aggressive capitalism, okay? They do not like the idea that the working class is going to be the cog in the machine, right? So, and they also, like I said too, they love universal suffrage. They like for everyone to be able to vote regardless of class, okay? Things they hate also are class structures. They do not like the idea that anyone is above them or anyone is innately born ahead of them, right? They don't like the idea of the bourgeois. They don't like the idea of the conservatives. They like the idea that the lowest man on the totem pole is just as important and happy as the highest man on the totem pole. Actually, even the fun fact of looking at it, they don't believe in totem poles, right? So they are much more of a bench kind of person. Now, and then lastly, things they also like, welfare states. So socialists are going to be the very first people to like emphasize old age insurance, accident insurance, unemployment benefits, like things like that. That's going to be brought around by the socialists early on. And then also, last thing that they hate more than anything else is they also hate absolutists, right? So they hate absolutists, but they also don't like the bourgeois either. All right, so now this is where we're going to stop, okay? And this is going to be kind of our jumping off point for the class next period. We're going to be able to talk about this big new ism tree that we'll be able to develop. And so when you're looking at this really quick, make sure you leave some space in case we ever want to reference back to it, okay? But I will see you guys in class, all right? And then we're going to pick up in class going into Clemens von Metternich and all of his stuff. And we're going to talk about why he's like this, right? Where do conservatives get their ideas from? Why do they think these things? Stuff like that, okay? You also have a good one.